And we're live. Hello,
Hello.
everyone. So this was supposed to be a Dr. Zhivago live show, and we're including Russian recommendations with it. So before we start, do you want to introduce yourselves and your channels? Starting with Evie.
I'm Evie. My channel is She Was Only Evie. Sorry, I'm a little bit distracted because I just found an inch-long ant-looking thing in my office, and I was flipping out. We're good. We're okay. This was supposed to be my first work of Russian literature, and it didn't work out too well. So I'm sure we'll talk about that in more detail.
I'm Christy Lewis from Dostoyevsky in Space, and I love Russian. I think Russian thought is really interesting, and I particularly love Dostoyevsky, and I was eager to try this one. But yeah, I also didn't have any success with this one. And we'll talk about that.
I'm Tiffany, and my channel name is Beautiful Minutia, and I too love Russian literature quite a bit. This was my first Pasternak, and it might be my last.
Well, I mean, the good thing is I think it was his only novel, so there you go.
Well, perfect. I haven't even done that much research. Thanks, Evie.
Yeah. Well, I am 4 for 4. I also did not finish this, which we will talk about. And I also really love Russian literature. So, yes. Did you guys all read the P&V translation? That's the one I have.
Yes.
I did not. I think I was the only one of the hosts that was reading the original English translation, which was, oh my gosh, Hayward, and I don't even have my book with me. I should know. I think Matt's in the comments. I think he read the same translation that I did.
Mm-hmm.
So there were a couple of us that weren't reading the P&V translation.
Oh, and by the way, congrats to Matt for finishing.
The only one that finished it. Such a trooper.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He was like, okay. He like pointed out things he really enjoyed and stuff, and I was like, I'm so glad. that makes me very happy.
That's it.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like if I read this in the original Russian, I'd probably get more out of it, I'm sure. But yeah. I gave it about 150 pages, and then I just didn't really care, unfortunately. So. Oh, somebody else finished it. Yay.
Yeah.
Oh, great. And Courtney did too. Yay, Courtney.
Excellent job.
Yes, was it worth it? That's the question. Yes, that's a good question. Matt and Courtney, was it worth it?
I feel kind of bad that I didn't ever get out of the backstory, because that maybe when the plot pushes forward, I mean, and I know it has important things to say, like it's kind of Tiffany, no.
No, I got more than halfway, and no.
Oh, I feel bad because I think it's kind of important, like all the controversy about it, and I'm sure it's important, but man, I would rather just read a nonfiction, honestly. In fact, I am reading about the Penny. I am reading about the Russian Revolution, and it's fascinating, but
that's what I was expecting. I was expecting more, like with I think we talked about in the Voxer chat, like things that Russian literature known for is like the family, the drama,
the blowouts,
and the great character development. And I feel like out of the 150 pages I read, I don't really know anything about the characters.
I think I read technically, I think I was the first one to DNF it. I was just like, I know this is not working for me. I think I read 25, 30 pages. It was into part 2. I had just started that, and I'm like, this is not working for me. Like, I'm not connecting with the writing style. I'm not connecting with anything. And if I can't anchor myself somewhere or somehow, then I'm like, it's not working for me. The thing that I really, really struggled with the most is all of it's just whiplash of movement from one character to the next. And I'm like, I just give me some, at one point, I was like, okay, I think I'm finally connecting to this character. And then they completely switch to a different one with a different perspective and different scene. And I'm like, gosh, darn it.
Mm-hmm.
Matt says the time jumps keep happening.
Yes, they do.
Well,
that was one of my biggest complaints, is things that should have been like a character forming experience, like something like a marriage and giving birth to a child, that should have been like, okay, this is a big part of these characters' lives. You're told in one sentence that they're married and they have like a 4-year-old daughter, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
When did that happen?
And I also wish that we had stayed more with Laura than Zhivago, because I didn't like Zhivago at all, and I was very sympathetic to Laura in the beginning, and I think if we had stayed with her more, I might have enjoyed the book more.
Yeah. This is interesting.
Wow.
Describe the Nobel Prize panel to select Dr. Zhivago as the winner.
Wait, so did it win then? Or
I think it
did, didn't it?
I think it did win.
well,
Yes.
I guess I have no.
He was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in literature in 1958.
Wow. I didn't know that the CIA bribed them.
Good old bribes work everywhere, I guess.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes,
Because
Courtney, it does.
I just got irritated because it's like have this scene that would have the potential to get to know them more, and then it would just say, and then this heartrending argument happened, and then it'd move on. And it's like, what did they argue about? What happened? Yep. And that's what irritated me the most. He just told us instead of showing.
Yeah.
So.
I just really struggled with the style. I didn't necessarily pin it down to what about it, but definitely I think the time jumps, the moving from character to character, not being able to remember which character was which, and then it was just kind of like stressful. Everything that I was reading in the story was stressful, and it just I was missing things. Like people would be talking about things that happened, and I'm like, I'm past that point, but I don't remember what you're talking about. Like it wasn't really working with my brain.
I do think that the Pavir and Volokonsky translation was worse, because I read little bits of it and listened to a little bit because we went on vacation last week, and I was running errands one day and driving around a lot. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to try to listen to a little bit more of this on audio before I decide whether or not I'm going to DNF it. And so I listened to it in the car, and I was like, this is torture. And I didn't feel that way when I was reading my physical copy, which was a different translation. So I think that the translation might have something to do with it. And I do feel like there are things like, I wish I had read more about the Russian Revolution before I read the book, because I think that Pasternak was taking for granted that obviously his readers would have known the context, the historical context that I didn't really know. And I think I would have enjoyed that aspect a little bit more if I had done more research.
Yeah. And it happens later. I didn't realize it was more modern than the other Russian literature that we read. And so I feel like if I had known more history, like we said, it probably would have resonated a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
And this was,
I do know that regarding the P&V, because I'm not going to even attempt to pronounce their names, translation, from what Igor has said, apparently in Moscow, they're really highly regarded as pretty accurate translators, regarding like nuances and like, I don't know, slang terms, I guess, like, you know, getting the subtext or whatever across. So
that's good to know. I mean, usually I find them very readable, but this was very choppy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I do feel like the book tried really well to do like descriptions, like poetic sounding descriptions really well. And maybe that didn't come across as well in your guys' translation. But my translation, there were sections that were absolutely beautiful, like describing the snow and describing the landscape. But it was really hard to invest in because I just felt like there was no connection to the characters. Like everyone was really flat. So that's what ultimately made me stop reading it.
I don't remember any super beautiful passages, so maybe that's just for yours,
Yeah.
which is horrible. I love stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I know it's got poetic stuff in there. I mean, the whole last section is just poetry that I didn't even get to. But
I think I read one of them, but that was it.
yeah. So
I remember. Okay, sorry.
So sorry, I was just gonna say, when did this take place? Was it
Early 1900s, I think, like 1920-ish, maybe, or 1930, maybe at the latest.
okay?
But at the very beginning, when Zhivago's a child, it's like 1903 or 5 or 10 or something like that. So the later part of the book would be a couple decades later.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I remember there was one line on like page 1. Oh dear. Yeah, that's awkward. I feel like fiction, a lot of times it explores the ambiguities of life, and I love that. But you don't necessarily need to get from fiction, answers to life. I feel like, I mean, sometimes you can, and I love that. Sometimes Dostoyevsky does that, and I love that. But also sometimes leaving it ambiguous is fine because people have different opinions about things. So if you can explore different opinions, that's cool. But just being like, this is the right way, a lot of times it falls flat for me a lot of times.
Yeah, and I feel like if it's
sorry,
more
go ahead.
vague.
You go ahead.
I feel like if it's a little more vague, it provides a lot of good discussion too. I mean, not that the other way can't, but I feel like it provides more openness for interpretation.
I was just curious. I was wondering if either you, Stephanie, or Christy, or anyone in the comments, if you got into some of the sections where there were like pages at a time kind of talking about like religious things. Because I love those elements in Tolstoy and Dostoevsky, and I am a Christian, and I really like exploring those like topics and thinking about them and diving deep in them. But I would read those and I would say, what are they even trying to say? I don't even understand. And I'm coming with a background of faith, and I'm like, how would someone who doesn't have a background of faith even know? Because I don't even have any clue what he was trying to say. So I wasn't sure if anyone else had any luck kind of like deciphering even what was trying to be said about religion, because I really struggled with that a lot.
I don't even know if I really got that far.
Okay, you might not have.
I'm not a religious person, but I also enjoy the way Tolstoy and all of them discuss it. I think it's really interesting, and I didn't get that out of this.
Okay.
But I may not have gotten that far. So
I did read some of that because I think it was Zhivago. I think it was. He was training to go into, I don't even remember the details now, but he was in school and he was kind of exploring these ideas. And I was like, when he was first talking about them, I did not know what he was saying. And then eventually he started giving ideas, and I was like, I disagree with these ideas. Okay, well, that's just another turn off for me. I think like essentially taking the mysticism out of Christianity and the Bible and that narrative was kind of where he was going.
Okay. That's helpful, because I was just kind of like, I don't know what you're even trying to say. Like you're quoting different scripture. I'm like, okay, I know that passage, but what are you even saying? I don't get the point of what you're trying to make.
yeah. That's interesting.
That is very interesting. I didn't get far enough to really get that from it. But I think that oftentimes the problem with DNFing a book is sometimes you don't see what the author was really fully trying to communicate if you don't complete it.
Yeah.
So I'm very willing to say that I didn't get the point of the book because I didn't finish it too. So maybe someday I'll come back to it, but probably not anytime super soon.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if we did understand the Russian Revolution better or lived it or something, if this would have meant so much to us as we were going that we would have looked past anything else. Because I read in an article that a friend sent me who loves this book. She and her father are part Russian, and she sent it to me. And she said, yeah, it's like our favorite. We love the movie. And so she sent me this article that mentioned that people in Russia, when they got the translation, would pass it around to each other and just read it really fast and pass it to the next person because it wasn't something that you could just buy. And because it wasn't published in Russia originally. So I think it was kind of like the Gulag Archipelago, in that people were just ravenous for these ideas. And it was just something that didn't exist in other fiction. And people looked to Russian writers for their politics, because they didn't trust the politicians. So
yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted more of that in there. But like you said, I think I really think if I had more of a background, I would have enjoyed it more.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard to really care about what an author is saying if you don't care about his characters and the plot isn't interesting. And I think there was just a lot of backstory, but even up to the halfway point, Tiffany said, it still was not like interesting to her.
Yeah, so. They were on the train, I think, when I stopped. So out of Moscow. Or maybe they finished their journey. I can't remember. But yeah. And I definitely felt like Zhivago was not a good husband as well.
Yeah.
But that's I didn't feel like it was an epic love story like people make it out to be.
I know.
I'm like, Zhivago's a jerk. And he manipulated poor Laura, I feel like. I'm like, oh, no, he's not so nice.
Yeah.
And it was weird. This is spoilery, but I guess, does that matter? Can I talk spoilers? Is that fine? Okay. In case anyone's not planning. So he writes a letter to his wife saying he's like on the front lines. He's a doctor and he's serving with Laura, who's a nurse. And he writes his wife and he's like, hey, do you remember this girl that shot that guy at the Christmas party that we went to? Do you remember her? I'm working with her. And his wife writes him back a letter saying, I'm just going to leave and take our son and you can just be with her so you'll be happier. And I was like, what? And he was like, wow. And he writes his wife a letter back. And he's like, I have no relationship with her. And if you got that impression from my letter, maybe I should talk to her and tell her that maybe I'm coming across that way to her. So he goes in and has a conversation with her and it's super awkward. And then he walks away saying that he was trying not to love her. And I'm like, what? Where was the part where he fell in love with her? It was just like real. So like that kind of stuff was just like, this doesn't make any sense. I made it really hard to buy into the story itself,
It's missing.
Yeah. And maybe it's being the translation into English. There are things that are lost. Yes, Matt. I felt like it was very unromantic as well. No, he wasn't good. But it just Yeah.
Oh dear.
Yeah, and I've only seen the movie that with Omar Sharif, and I remember liking it, but I think it's different from the book. If I remember.
Yeah, my older sister loved that movie. I remember that growing up, and so that was the only context I had going into this. Is that my older sister loved the movie. So, yes, poor dog.
Matt said something earlier. I'm sorry. What did you say?
I said Pasternak did Tanya dirty. He really did. Poor woman. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Matt said something earlier about how the book focuses on how the revolution affected more common people, I think he said, rather than focusing on the revolution itself. And that's actually interesting. In the beginning, I do remember it showed kind of the labor movement and how the different leaders had to think and try to survive, because yeah, it was just really dangerous. So that was interesting, and how it affected the shopkeepers, like small business owners and stuff like that. So that was interesting.
Mhm. Absolutely.
I feel like Tolstoy also has very large casts a lot of times, kind of like this. Like it had a very large cast, and it tried to cover a lot of people and how they felt and thought about what was going on. I just feel like Tolstoy is maybe more successful at getting you to care about those characters.
100%. Definitely agree with that.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else you'd like to touch on Zhivago before we kind of segue over to Russian Rex?
I was useful in this conversation, and I'm going to be pretty useful in the next one. So I'm just here for eye candy, baby.
Oh, I like that. Much more soulful.
That's a good word to describe it, because he goes really deep into human nature and people's thoughts and desires and all that kind of stuff, more so than I think. Zhivago felt very surface level.
Yes. Definitely.
Well, I mean, considering it was written in the 1950s, of what little I read, and hearing you guys talk about it, like, do you think it was more experimental in its style? Because I know, like, a lot of the, like, Wolf and stuff like that were around that time, and they were really the forerunners of the more experimental literature at the time. So maybe he was just along with those group of people.
Yeah, I could totally see that.
I definitely felt that way about it. I was like, I felt when I was reading Virginia Woolf, also my brain, I really just struggled with it. And I felt the same thing with this, which is why I gave up on it, in the first 100. I got to like page 90, and I was just like, it took me over a month to read these 90 pages, even with immersion reading. And so I just knew that stylistically, it was too complicated for me at this time.
Yeah, stylistically, it's very different from other Russian authors that I've read. Not that I've read a ton, but I have read Bulgakov, and he is much more modern as well. And his writing is nothing like Pasternak's. And I think that he wrote in the 50s and 60s, I think. So around the same time, I think, because wasn't Dr. Zhivago originally written in the 50s?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like. So, and also I didn't have the background on Soviet Russia, but I was able to get a lot out of Bulgakov's books, but not out of Pasternak's. So, and the style could have a lot to do with it.
So TLDR is, maybe not. This might not work for everybody.
Not for your first work of Russian literature, I would say, for sure.
No.
Don't start here, because you might never try anything else if it doesn't work for you. And
Please
there are
don't
some
judge
that will.
it based
Yes.
on this.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is sad. I wanted to like it so much.
I did too.
But maybe I'll try it in 10 years and I'll like it. Who knows?
Yeah, because
didn't
we
even
change
get
over
to
time.
the third wife?
Oh no.
No, I didn't get to the third wife, but I did read the synopsis, so I knew there was one.
Yeah.
I was like, and I read the synopsis. I'm like, how is the synopsis more interesting than the actual book? I was like, that's not a good sign.
When I read, I think it was the back of this book, I read it. I was like, oh, this sounds interesting. They're like fleeing to the mountains, to escape this Russian Revolution, and they get drawn in anyways. Like, this sounds like action-packed.
Only in the background. Except for the Christmas party scene. The Christmas party scene was great. That gave me hope. I was like, okay, we got Laura coming in here. She tries to shoot somebody. This is awesome. And that was probably my favorite scene in the book, honestly.
That's the one I remember the most out of everything I read.
Yeah, that was a good scene. I was like, okay, it's picking up, and then it unpicked up in 2 sentences. That sounds about right.
Wow.
Because when Laura marries, I can't remember his name. It was Pasha, maybe? She marries him. It's like, and she married him, and they have a 4-year-old daughter. And I'm like, what?
Very random.
Yeah, it was just like out of nowhere. And the daughter doesn't come up very much again.
No.
Ooh, we're getting to that.
Yeah.
That's the second half of this live stream.
Well.
So I feel like Tiffany and Stephanie have read probably the most Russian literature.
Oh, I don't know. You've read a lot, Christy.
Well,
I've read some.
I'll go ahead and get my recommendation out of the way. It is not Russian literature. It's Russian inspired.
Still good, though.
Stephanie, if you could, you have the books. The Winter Night Trilogy by Catherine Arden. This is my favorite trilogy of all time. So
Beautiful.
Really, really good.
Yeah.
I loved the first book in that trilogy.
Not super long, so great to get into. Yeah, I really like the folklore aspect of this one.
Yeah.
That's what drew me into that one.
The first book is so atmospheric, too.
Yes. Sorry. I have a candle going, and I almost got my book in the candle. That would have been horrible.
This book is lit, y'all.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
That was your first? Holy cow. Kudos to you.
I'm
You're
impressed.
amazing.
That's a chunker.
Stephanie and I just read that together this year.
And I also would not recommend this for your first one.
Yours too? How did I not know that, Courtney? I know we talked about Dostoyevsky, but I didn't know that was your first one.
That's intense.
I've owned this book for like 15 years, and I just now read it this year.
It's a little scary.
I was very intimidated by it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to have to try that one again in a couple years because I DNF'd it like a little over halfway through. That was sad. I think my first thing that I read from Russia was in college. For some reason, we didn't read anything really much. I had like one world literature class, and I studied English literature. So I read The Death of Ivan Ilyich by Leo Tolstoy. Loved it. I love that. I still love it. I think it's the perfect length. It's the most impactful Tolstoy story that I've ever read. I haven't actually finished any of his longer things, and I don't like his shorter things because they're kind of preachy. So I think that was a great place to start, although some people really hate it. So
yeah, I haven't read that one. But I agree, short stories are a great place to start. Gives you a little bit of a taste of their writing. Because Chekhov has a lot of short stories, and I've liked every short story I've read by him so far.
I haven't read him yet. I need to get into him.
Yeah. But I think they're really good, especially because, honestly, a lot of Russian literature is huge.
yeah.
Yeah, it is, which is why it's intimidating, I think.
Yes.
Chekhov is so impactful in a short space. He's pretty incredible in that way. I was kind of expecting something more like Chekhov when I read this, actually, even though I don't know why. This is a novel, and Chekhov writes plays and short stories mostly, I think. Did he write any novels?
I feel like he might have written at least some novellas. I don't know if they were like a little longer than short stories. I feel like, but I could be wrong.
Okay.
I didn't watch Star Trek.
Golden Girls, Dorothy references this, and she said, I like teaching people that know that Chekhov wasn't just a character in Star Trek. Thank you. But yes, he was.
That's funny.
And I never know how to pronounce this last name, but I've heard he's really
I
good.
always pronounced it Onegin.
Yeah,
That's
it's
Pushkin.
Yeah,
So-
Pushkin's verse novel.
I have read
or
that.
whatever you call it. Yeah.
My very first work of Russian literature that I started with was Crime and Punishment by Dostoyevsky. So that really has a soft place in my heart because I picked it up just randomly for like no reason. I just saw it at the library and I was immediately like hooked and drawn in. And so even though that's not as short as like The Death of Ivan Ilyich, which I do think is a good place to start also because that's amazing. That was one of my favorite things that I read last year. It's longer, but it didn't feel very long to me. I think it's like 500 pages or something. So it's not War and Peace length by any means. But it made me realize that Russian literature was a lot more accessible than I thought it was. So I still think that that's probably a good place to start too. But if you're intimidated by that as well, short stories are definitely a good place to start.
Yeah. Well, and Crime and Punishment's really good because you really get into his head.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that would appeal to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
I think my favorite Dostoevskys are when you get into one person's head really deeply, because even though he ventures out, to explore a lot of other perspectives a lot of times in his work, but if you can just cling to one person, your first time through, that will really, I think, help. And I think it's very engaging. So Crime and Punishment would be a great place to start. I also loved The Idiot, but that's not a universal opinion. But I loved it for the same reason. You're really in one guy's head, and he develops his theme from there.
Yeah, and I feel like it doesn't have, it does have a decent amount of characters, but not like War and Peace level. So, and because you do stay with Raskolnikov, the main character, so much, the cast of characters does not feel like this untenable thing that you're like trying to figure out quite as much.
Mm-hmm.
The names are still a little difficult though, but that's just something you got to get over with Russian literature. Keep a list of people's names, and that will help you a lot. That and philosophy are big parts of every Russian book that I've read.
Mm-hmm.
And this reminded me too, I haven't read Notes from Underground, but Notes from a Dead House or The Dead House that has a couple different titles. That would be a good place to start too, I think.
Is that Dead Souls as well? Also known as Dead Souls by Gogol?
Mm-mm.
No, okay.
No, it's Dostoyevsky.
Okay.
But it's his time, based on his time in the Gulag.
It's like a Siberian work camp.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's got a good amount of characters, but it's not huge. And I thought it was pretty accessible to you. It's only 300, I think, pages-ish. So it's pretty short.
Notes from the Underground's really short too. I haven't read that one yet, but it's like, I have it right here. It's very, very short for Dostoevsky. Like,
I loved
less
Notes
than
from the
200
Underground.
pages.
But it is, so Notes from the Underground, I tackled it earlier on in my Dostoevsky reading because I was like, oh yeah, it's so short. But like part one is really difficult because it's so philosophical. You have to just hang in through part one, and then the story kind of develops a little more in part two. But I ended up loving what he was saying, so I loved it.
Matt, just based on the title, I will look into the devils, aka demons, aka possessed.
I want to
Eventually do a buddy read of that. So
I'm planning on reading that one this year at some point.
Yeah,
I
really
think-
want to read that one.
I think Codex might be doing it.
Yeah.
That, maybe.
I
Talk
think
about it.
I am going to read it with them if they're reading it
Mm-hmm.
this year.
That's
We
why
need
I'm
to
holding
touch
out.
base.
So Anna Karenina is my favorite. And it's kind of big.
What a pretty addition. Oh, my word.
Yeah. One of my favorites. But I think it's pretty readable. It's huge and it's got a lot of characters, but I feel like it's readable and it's relatable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we get into their heads enough that you connect with the characters. So I don't think it's too ambitious, but other people may have a different opinion. But I think
No, I
compared to
agree.
like War and Peace,
Yeah.
I would definitely start with Anna Karenina.
For sure. I agree. That was actually my first Tolstoy, and my second Russian book was Anna Karenina. And I got so enthralled with the story that I read it in like a week. I was like, I don't need to eat or sleep. I'm gonna read this. Like, that's how much I loved it. So it definitely has a good plot and everything too.
Yeah. And so many good
It's good for audiobookers too, because
Yes.
once you kind of know the cast, you can just listen to it and it's very engaging.
Yeah. I find Tolstoy is actually very, very readable. Surprisingly, despite the reputation that he has, I think that he is actually maybe easier to read than Dostoyevsky, even though I prefer Dostoyevsky.
Stylistically.
I just think that like every one of his I've read, I'm like, oh, this is way easier to read than I thought. But I do like Dostoyevsky's like exploration of philosophy and of religion and of the characters a little bit better than I like Tolstoy's. I haven't read Dead Souls yet. It's on my shelf. I got for Christmas. That's an edition.
I enjoyed Dead Souls, but they're right. It does not have an ending.
I enjoyed it too. It's very funny.
I tabbed it. But yeah, it's very entertaining. I think this one is good too. And it's also not very long. But you have to be okay with not really having an ending. So.
But the way it's written, it's almost okay. Una!
Yes. That hurts.
Oh, that's funny because I would have been the other way around.
Yeah, me too.
I enjoyed War and Peace, but I had a hard time with it, honestly. Like the big, long battle sequences and all the historical stuff, like I struggled with it a little bit, honestly.
If we hadn't buddy read it, it would have taken me way longer to get through that book.
I DNF'd it when I tried to read it by myself, and I needed to read it with Stephanie to be able to read it. Interesting.
I think I started that and then never finished it. But
I would love to watch that. I really enjoyed The Master and Margarita. I read that last summer. It's crazy though. Like it is the weirdest book I've ever read in my whole life. It's basically about the devil coming to Moscow, but no one recognizes him as that. And it's just, there's a big talking black cat. Like half of it reads like a fever dream. But it was really interesting.
Mm-hmm. And
So,
sorry, I got lost in the comments.
I agree,
and this
Courtney.
is an interesting point too. Intellect versus the soul, which
interesting.
I like that.
That's interesting.
I felt like, that's probably a good comparison.
Yeah.
I think I actually preferred War and Peace to Anna Karenina, but I didn't finish either of them. So I don't know what that says about me.
The ending of Anna Karenina kind of made it for me, honestly. That's what made it so high of a rating. Oh, you're still at halfway. That makes me feel better.
Hello, Karen. Yeah.
Sure did.
Because weren't you guys supposed to finish that last month? I mean, I'm not judging. I'm just asking.
It took me 3 months to read it, so for sure I'm not judging either.
But I think the read along was like 2 months, maybe.
Which is very ambitious for that book.
Yeah, very ambitious.
Very ambitious. I think Sandy from Miss Reads a Lot, she read it in like 5 or 6 weeks. And I'm like, dude, how?
Wow. That's intense.
I don't know how she did it. And then I noticed in June, she's like, all short books, no tomes.
Except I'm reading The Once and Future King with her, and that's almost 700 pages long. I'm like, oh, short books. Okay.
I love that book.
I haven't read it yet. I was like, I'll accept that one. That one's not short.
Yes. Definitely. So do you have a favorite translator that you would recommend people start with as well? Because I know that plays a big role too.
I think a lot of people, when they're first coming into Russian literature, Pavir and Volokonsky feels a little more modern in its translation. So that can kind of set you up for success, I think. But they're not my favorite translators. Garnett is my favorite translator for Dostoyevsky, and Maud is my favorite Tolstoy translator. So, but I do think that trying Pavir and Volokonsky can be really good if you're used to reading not as much classic literature. I think it's a little more accessible, but I always recommend for people to go to like a bookstore that has multiple translations and read a couple paragraphs in each one and just see which one you kind of jive with a little better.
Mm-hmm. I also like Garnett. I love P&B, but Garnett was my first with Anna Karenina, and I love her. Really matched with me. Yeah, I thought it was really readable.
I know some people who don't like her though. I remember when Christy did the Crime and Punishment read along. I think it was. Didn't you do that last fall, Christy? And someone was it Michi hated it. She was like, she had to switch because she's like, I can't do this. I can't do it. Aww. So like, I just think it's different translations are just going to jive better for different people. So it's good
and it depends on the book too and the author. Yes. Like yeah, I love everything with Pavir and Volokonsky when they translate Tolstoy, and I think it was them that translated my Anna Karenina, and I thought it was very smooth, very good. But like this one didn't work out for me, and I didn't love their Gogol translation either. It wasn't terrible or anything, but I read it alongside another translation that I actually preferred. So it just depends.
Yeah.
I need to find, I have a different, so the first Crime and Punishment that I read was a really older translator of Dostoyevsky, and I loved his translation, but it felt very modern, like very slang heavy, and sometimes it almost took me out a little bit, but I honestly loved it. It was so gripping. So I need to find that. Let me see if I can find it.
I haven't read anything by Anthony Briggs, but I know that he's a popular translator for Tolstoy. And I had heard that in War and Peace, he kind of like the soldiers don't feel like they're talking like French or Russian. It feels very like Victorian England, the way that they're talking. And so I never even read it because I was just kind of like, But he's a very popular Russian translator as well.
Okay. I haven't read anything by him or that he's translated.
I haven't yet either. That kind of put me off. So
yeah. Well, and honestly, I didn't even really think about translators until I joined BookTube. I just read whatever I got and didn't even think about the difference.
That's what I did too, because I'd just get my books from the library and they usually only had one translation.
Yeah, that's the one I read for War and Peace.
Me too.
And I thought they did a good job. It was easier to read than I thought it would be.
I think they were actually like Tolstoy approved translators. So that was kind of why I was drawn to that translation specifically. Because I'm like, oh, well, if he felt like that was a really good translation, then that feels like maybe that's the one I want to do.
Yeah. I like that translation, but the audiobook was only available from Audible and the chapters didn't match. So that was really frustrating because I couldn't just find my place easily. That was another reason why I might have been able to finish it if they matched.
That's the other thing that drove me nuts about War and Peace, because even our buddy read, it was like books were sections and then chapters were books, and we couldn't really match up.
And we had the same translator.
Yeah.
And then
the ebook, same translator, didn't match up with my book. It was so weird.
It really was.
So Michael Scammell is the translator of the first Crime and Punishment that I read. I would recommend this for your first read. I know, it is.
I haven't heard of that one either. Rosamund Bartlett. You know, for as many times as I've read Anna Karenina, I really haven't read any other translators for her other than Garnett.
Well, hey, if you
so I
love it, if
think-
it's not broke, why don't fix it, you know?
I was gonna say, I think the Anna K that Matt is referring to is like the retelling. Like it's a
Oh,
modern retelling.
Ooh,
Anna Karenina.
I'll have to try that.
Oh, the young adult one? Anna K? Okay, yeah. I was
I've heard
eyeing
of
that one.
but I
No, isn't that Jenny Lee?
Oh, maybe
Anna,
I'm confusing them.
the
Never mind.
YA retelling, I think, is Jenny Lee.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Never mind.
Because I have that one. I haven't read it yet.
Nice.
But
I
maybe
haven't
that's
heard
a new
anyone-
translator.
sorry. I was just gonna say I haven't heard anyone who actually has read and loved Anna Karenina review that yet. I've heard a lot of people be like, "Oh, I really liked it," and I'm like, "But did you read Anna Karenina?"
I'm afraid to read it.
Mm-hmm.
I got it for my birthday last year, I think, and I still haven't read it. I'm afraid. But yeah.
Oh, nice.
Oh, I haven't read any Tolstoy biographies. Just the Dostoyevsky one.
Isn't Dostoyevsky one like 4,000 pages? Is that the one I'm thinking
Very
of?
long. There, it does come in like, I think there's like the 5-volume one, and then there's the condensed one, which I read the condensed one, and it's great. I haven't finished it, but I dip into it whenever I read a new book.
Yeah. And then we were saying before the thing started, I haven't started this yet, but Christy did. It's
I did.
Dostoyevsky short story collection. And
Ooh,
one of the translators is Pasternak's nephew.
interesting.
Yeah. But you said you liked this translation so far?
Yeah, it's like I'm comparing it to another translation currently, and this one is definitely more readable. It's like very modern and smooth, so that's fine with me. But yeah.
Slater. Nicholas Pasternak Slater and Maya Slater are the
Interesting.
translators.
I'm only
But
like
this-
50 pages in.
Yeah, but this may be a good place. It's only 200 something pages and it's tiny.
Yes. My friend Jennifer really loves Dostoevsky's short fiction a lot. She said The Idiot was her entry place and she loved it. And then I think her other favorites are the shorts, all the short stories she's read from him.
I actually haven't read any of his short stories yet. I have a collection of them on my shelf. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. I've only read the novels.
Yeah. I also love that nobody's mentioned the Brothers K yet.
I love Brothers K, but I liked Crime and Punishment more.
I would
so
not
that's
start with this one.
I wouldn't recommend that as a starting point necessarily because it is a little heftier.
But it's so
So.
fun.
It is a good
It's-
one though. I love
It's like
it.
Dostoevsky's War and Peace.
Yeah, it's my second favorite Dostoevsky. I love it
Yeah.
a lot.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I struggled with that one, but I really also loved it. So I feel like
Worth the
I'll
work.
probably get it. Yeah, it was worth the work. Exactly. I finished it. So, there you go.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too that I had to come to terms with War and Peace is that it's going to take me forever and it's okay because I'm used to getting through books. And so I had to teach myself to slow down and it was worth it. But
Yeah.
that's one thing too to keep in mind is they're going to take time because they're
Especially
just
War and
so,
Peace.
there's so much to get out of it. Yeah.
Yeah,
So they're very readable. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
I need to
Uh,
read The Idiot.
It took me 3 months to read The Idiot, but it was 1000% worth it.
Yeah. I read it 10
Yes,
years
Tony.
ago.
Woo.
Stephanie, you'll love the beginning of The Idiot, like the whole first book, like in it, because it is like the most epic drama I have read in any
I
Russian
know.
novel ever, and I'm not kidding.
And
Like it
it's
is so over the top that I'm like, man, if Dostoyevsky wrote Real Housewives, it would be this. Like it is crazy.
I know, and it's sad because I read it a long time ago, and I don't really remember anything about it other than I really liked it. So I'm excited to read it again.
Yay. Woo.
I read it last year too, Courtney.
This
Yes.
is so refreshing. All these Dostoevsky fans.
Yay.
So Evie, what do you think you might try next? Just to put you on the spot.
So I've just been sitting here. I'm like, I'm gonna browse Amazon, look at translators. I'm just gonna like whatever. But I actually already have. I'm pretty sure I have the complete stories of Gogol. I also have the tales and novellas of Pushkin, like his poetic works. So I might try Pushkin first, and then maybe try Gogol, or if Matt convinces me to buddy read Demons with him. But as we push off the Night Watchman even farther, so
Hi, Amanda.
Hi, Amanda.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that, but Gogol's short stories are really
That's a great entry place.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, and Pushkin, I like him as well. I read a ton of this a while ago, and then I just got out of the habit of reading Russian literature for a while. So I remember loving all of this, but I don't remember a lot of what I read because it was so long ago.
Oh yeah, I think I do like Pushkin too, actually.
But yeah,
The Shot. It's Pushkin.
I haven't read that one. I've only read Eugene Onegin, which is his like novel length one.
but I agree that Pushkin is really readable.
I think I need to. Okay, there's one. It's like the Queen of Spades or something. I think that's Pushkin, and I loved that story.
That sounds familiar. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
It reminds me of Punch Man.
I was going to say, I just want to read Pushkin because he's quoted in the Winter Night trilogy throughout. So
he's quoted in a lot of things.
I have a very base, like low standard. So
Well,
Well,
he's
I know
referenced
it's
in a
fun.
lot of Tolstoy and Dostoevsky as well, so he's referenced everywhere.
thanks.
He's like
I
a
think-
Russian national treasure.
He's a big deal.
He really is. He really is.
Has anyone read Turgenev?
I was just wondering, like, I'm reading Fathers and Sons at some point this year, but I was like, oh, no one's brought him
Or
up yet.
Turgenev?
I
I think
haven't
it's
read
Turgenev, but
Turgenev.
I'm not sure.
Turgenev. Yeah.
I could be saying it wrong, but that's how I've heard other people say it, so
I
I'm
know
wrong
Matt-
with them.
I know Matt said in the chat earlier that he wants to try Turgenev.
Yeah, I'd like to try them too, because I've heard Fathers and Sons is really good.
What did you think, Courtney? Did you like it? Because I really want to read that one. I'm planning to maybe read it this summer. You didn't like it. Okay. Dang it.
I just don't like him
Well-
on principle because he mocked Dostoevsky, who was
Yeah,
very
they weren't
mockable at the
friends.
time. But
So
After reading The Sinner and the Saint, I'm like, oh. They were not friends.
tangentially related, well, actually very much related. So we talk a lot, all the Russian literature that we've been referring to, it's a lot of dudes. Are there any like famous-ish female Russian authors, either classic or more modern, that you guys know of?
I haven't read it yet, but In Memory of Memory by, I think it's Maria Stepanova. I'm mispronouncing that. That one is a newer translation. And I remember Kieran, I think he was kind of so-so on it. I don't know if he's still in the chat. But I own it because I was excited to see a female Russian author in translation because I haven't seen that many.
Right, you're gonna have to send me how to spell her name.
I'll send you a picture of it. Okay.
I have
Oh yeah,
this
send it in our
collection-
chat. I want to see it too.
Yeah, yeah, that would be great. I have this collection. I haven't opened it yet. I got it from Book Outlet. It's like Russian stories. It's like the everyday man's like pocket collection. And it has like some classic ones in there. It's got all kinds of ones. And there's actually like at least like 6 or 7 women that have short stories in here. But I don't know if they are more modern stories or if they're more classic. I'm not really sure because I think it's a mix. But there's a lot of women that wrote short stories for this book. So I'm intrigued by that because I haven't really seen that very much either.
That's a good, okay, that reminded me because I read a collection as well of, it's like Russian Christmas stories, and there were some women writers in there as well.
I
What?
forgot about that.
Yeah.
I just completely blocked that from my mind. I don't know. But yeah, honestly, with classic Russian literature, I think they're really just mainly dudes that everybody knows about. Honestly.
Down with the patriarchy.
Which is crazy because a lot of them write really good women.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's it. In memory of memory. Yeah. I want to read it at some point. I've had it and I just haven't read it yet.
Is that a newer book? Or
Mhm.
Okay. I figured if it was on the Booker, it probably was. But
Yeah, it's a newer book. But I would love Rex if you guys know of any in the chat for modern Russian authors, because really all the ones I've read are classics.
That was a great idea, Evie. Good question.
yeah, it is a really
Well,
good question.
We'll just have to ask Igor and just be like, give us information, Igor.
I know.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Okay, I'm reading the flap on this collection of short stories that I have. And it has a short story by someone called Teffi, T-E-F-F, or T-E-F-F-I. And she's been like recently rediscovered and a century ago was considered the female Chekhov. So she is a classic writer. But the other ones in here, they said, are more modern. But one of them was a Nobel Prize winner, Svetlana Alexeyevich.
Oh,
So-
I have read her. I've read her Chernobyl. It's nonfiction.
Okay.
But it was
nice.
really, really good.
Oh,
What was
Ooh.
I
the
read that.
who was the first name that you mentioned, Tiffany?
Teffi, T-E-F-F-I.
She's in the Christmas collection too.
Is she? Okay. The story that's in this collection is The Quiet Backwater, which sounds kind of intriguing, honestly.
Yes.
Nice, Matt.
Nice, Matt.
You mean the
Yeah.
male version of Teffi? That's who you're talking about? Okay. Just want to make
Right.
sure it's the same Chekhov.
We need to get her name out there.
Yeah.
So,
Well, apparently this collection's helping with that.
completely tangentially related to that is so I fall down rabbit holes on TikTok all the time, and I do like history TikTok stuff, and this one video came up, and this lady's like, every time someone brings up Julius Caesar, I say, oh, don't you mean Cleopatra's boyfriend? And I was like, yes.
Oh, that's funny.
I like that.
That's awesome.
We should get that going viral, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I have heard of that.
I have not. Cool. Some great recommendations in here. You guys are the best.
Yes.
I love this.
Thank you for
My
thank you.
TBR is growing.
Yes. I need to check out Chernobyl.
Yes,
It's-
that sounds
It's
amazing.
very, very graphic, but very, very good.
You would kind of expect that, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it would have to be accurate, right?
Yeah, and she's got another one that's nonfiction. I haven't read it yet. But again, I know Kieran from Katie Books really liked it. I get modern stuff from him. And it was about I think female soldiers or something like that, but it was supposed to be really good too.
Interesting.
Also, yes, please.
Yes, please. Then we'll have it in the chat.
Yes.
Back on too.
Yes. Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Wow.
It I learned a lot from that one that I had no idea. And the effects it had on people. It was heavy, but it was good.
I'm kind of addicted to history at the moment.
I bet you'd really like it then.
Probably.
Maybe it'd be a good audiobook.
Yeah.
It might be.
History on audio is great. Some
Yeah.
books do not work, but some really do. I forgot. I'm listening to one right now, and she's a U.S. foreign ambassador, and she stayed in Ukraine and also Moscow and like several places in the area in the Baltic. And she is Russian, like by heritage, but her parents moved to America. And so it's called Lessons from the Edge, and it's very interesting. She's tracking like the history of Ukraine and Russia during her stay there, and it was very tumultuous, and it's like really fascinating.
That does sound interesting.
Yes.
Marie Yovanovich.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, put that in the chat too, Christy. So I'm going to
Okay,
scroll
well.
back later and write them down.
Yeah, this is great. This is such a successful stream.
It really is.
Who would have thought?
And
Yeah.
Christy, Amanda has a question for you.
Oh man. Okay, well, Stephanie and I are buddy reading this next month. So there's that one.
Which you're totally welcome to join, because I haven't started it yet.
Yes, please join us if
Tempting
you're
me, you
interested.
guys. You're tempting me.
Should we talk about this in the Literary Discourse Discord and then do like reading sprints?
Oh, that would be fun.
Okay, let's do that.
I could get it next week.
And
I'm gonna buy it after I get off.
Yeah,
Poor
it's
Tiffany.
ebook and physical book on Amazon. I don't know if there's an audiobook yet.
I'm
I
more of a
didn't see
physical
one yet.
book person, so that won't deter me.
Yeah, because it just came out, I think, April.
I love the cover of it too.
Yeah.
Isn't it so great? In the translation, A Bad Business. It's a great title.
Yes. I'm down with that. Well, there's one buddy read. There
Is
you
Una
go.
still on here? Because Una might be able to tell us if there's going to be a buddy read of Demons later this year. I don't know if he's still on here or not, though. Because I'm waiting to read Demons until they do. I missed out on War and Peace by reading it a little earlier than them, but
Yeah.
Stephanie and I still talk about those, so it's still good times. But
Yeah, I'm
I
excited.
would love to be part of one of those read-alongs with them. I'm always off just a little bit. Like when they were going to read the idiot, I'm like, oh, I just read that.
Well, and I love that their videos, they always give background context, which is so nice.
I learned so much from their videos. I love them. They go so deep into like historical stuff and all that kind of stuff. I feel like I understand so much more after I watch their videos.
So they've got good ones for, I know Anna Karenina, we did Brothers K. And I'm behind. Do they have any for War and Peace yet?
Not yet, but they do have some for the idiot. Well, a lot for the idiot. And I think Crime and Punishment too.
Yeah. So really good resources there.
Mm-hmm. They have like some like before you read, so they're not spoilery. And they have like a lot of context like that you might want to know before you read it. And then they have like in-depth videos like just going into all the spoilers and everything too. But I like that they have the before you read so I can watch them and not be like, oh, now I know everything.
Yes, that's the one. The Unwomanly Face of War.
Ah.
World War II woman's perspective. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
It's a great
That
title. I
one's-
like that title. It like makes
Yeah,
me
that
interested just from the title.
So I in my Googling, Sophia Kavoshinskaya, whatever, I'll put this in the chat. City Folk and Country Folk, published in the 1800s. Apparently it's a satire of Russian society. So
That sounds interesting. I've never even heard of that.
apparently she published under a male's name for a while. This is
Okay.
probably going to show up as Stephanie because we have a shared StreamYard account. So I am you.
We've become one person.
Identity theft.
Oh my gosh. Try to say that last name 5 times fast.
Oh my gosh. I'm not even going to try. I was about to.
That's
and then
the
I
other
don't know.
fun thing is trying to pronounce things correctly, and it feels so satisfying when you get it right.
Mhm.
I will have to look into her. But yeah, so Demons possibly later this year, hopefully, with the Codex Cantina. And then I think that's all I know of right now.
And I should say as well, Codex Cantina did a series of videos called Tolstoy Triggered about his short stories. So if you ever just want to read some of his short stories and get their opinions on them, they have it's like a hashtag Tolstoy Triggered. There you go.
Nice.
I didn't even know about those ones, so cool.
Well, as we're wrapping up, do you have any channel announcements for your channels? Like anything coming up for you guys? Or read-alongs or
I mean,
anything?
in theory, there's going to be a live show of the second book of the Seven Waters trilogy, but we're still trying to work that out. I think we're also trying to make sure that there's not going to be like a duke out, like full-on fight, since 50% of us hated it and 50% of us liked it. So,
Oh,
Whoa, that's
Good
fun.
live show.
yeah.
it'll be fun
Yes.
to do pros and cons though. To like
Yeah.
debate style, you present your arguments.
Yeah. Although it's been like a month since the ones of us who hated it finished it. So I think the absolute disdain and disgust of the book has kind of tempered. So
It won't be positively venomous.
yeah.
Yes. And then for June, Evie, me, and Kate for Shelf Space are doing a memory called Empire, which is fantastic. It'll be a reread for me.
I'm so glad Angela will finally be able to stop hassling me about read this book.
I know now that she's left the chat. Yes, it's
I'm co-hosting a read-along of The Count of Monte Cristo on my channel. But we'll be having live shows on Naomi from Naomi's Bookshelf on her channel. And that'll be going from like June through August.
I will say, nothing like obviously scheduled, but I do want to get into French literature, specifically Victor Hugo, not Les Mis, Notre Dame de Paris, because I love The Hunchback of Notre Dame animated movie, and I know it's obviously
completely different.
I'll read that with you because it's been like years since I've read it, and I have been wanting to reread it.
Yeah, because
I really liked it.
I read The Count of Monte Cristo like in high school, and I barely remember it, and I'm pretty sure it was the abridged version. So I just want to read some Hugo.
And that one's definitely a lot shorter than Count of Monte Cristo.
Mm-hmm.
Oh God! What was? Maybe it was Zola that I read. Oh no! Oh crap! It's gonna bug me. Hold on. Let me look it up.
The Bad Business book, Amanda. Are you joining us? If so, yay.
Yay.
I did read a while ago. Let me find it.
I
Therese-
tried to read
Therese
Proust.
Rankin.
I haven't tried him yet.
I tried to read Proust, which it's been, again, a while, but that was a hard one. I think it was Swan's Way. I don't remember if that's the title of the first one. But yeah, the whole book is In Search of Lost Time, or the whole set.
I've
But
not
I've
tried
heard
Proust yet.
I've heard it's fantastic. I need to try it again. But I have heard it's challenging.
I just want to add too that the Notre Dame book is also a bit of a challenge, but it's so beautiful and totally different from the movie.
Yeah.
Does it
No,
have as
there's
many
no talking
tangents?
gargoyles.
No talking gargoyles.
And
Does it have as many
Frollo.
tangents as Les Mis?
It has tangents about
Just
the
wondering.
architecture
Okay.
of
But not
Paris.
the sewer system.
Not the sewer. I don't think so. Not the sewer system.
Yeah.
No,
there
no
were
nunneries.
Yeah. There were
No
so many
nunneries.
tangents in Les Mis. What was the hashtag I survived Waterloo?
Yep.
Yeah.
Because it
Waterloo
was
is tough. And
it
the
was-
nunnery. The nunnery rant was what really that was harder for me than Waterloo by a lot. It's like, okay. We just got back to the story.
Yay. That
I
makes-
think the Notre Dame book, that one killed Michael Nips venturing into classics. I haven't seen him read a
Aw.
classic since he read that one with me.
Sad.
It is sad.
I think that's about when I found his channel too. And it's like, oh, poor guy.
This might be a stretch for a recommendation. It's purely a joke. Marquis de Sade. Just saying.
I don't think I know who that is.
It's where you get the term sadist from.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, he was a very sexual fellow. So
Lot to talk about, I bet, though.
yeah.
You read it.
Yeah. Anywho, on that note, yeah, there you go. There, Kurt and I are on the same page.
Ooh, this took a turn.
You're welcome.
Way to go, Evie.
Well, you know, you got to set your expectations when I'm involved.
Well, does anybody have any final thoughts before we wrap up?
I'm so glad that I wasn't the only one to DNF this, and that
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you, Evie, for sending us those books because now we had this great conversation as a result.
Got lots of great recommendations for other Russian authors.
And if you try them, please let us know because we would love to hear all the thoughts.
Yes.
So, all right. Well, I will have everybody's channels linked down below in the description. And thank you guys for joining me, even though we DNF'd it. This has been fun. And
Thank you, Stephanie.
Yes, thank you.
And we will see everybody later.
Bye.